Hello and welcome to Newsclick. Today we have with us Surya Shankar Dash, an activist and a filmmaker from Odisha. Surya has been making films extensively on the issue of land acquisition for industrialization in Odisha over the last several years. And in fact, he's not only been making films, but he's been training people in the areas who were affected by land acquisition. He's been training people in those areas to make their own films on the issues of land acquisition. So in fact, very often when the mainstream media has not been able to actually bring out footage of the state and police brutality, a lot of that footage has actually come from Surya's media collective, which is called Video Republic. Welcome to Newsclick, Surya.
Thank you, Naku.
Surya, we actually meet today at a time when there's been a lot of news is pouring in about the incident on the 3rd of February. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened on the 3rd at Gobindpur?
To start with, to come to what happened on the 3rd of Feb, I would just like to tell you what's been happening out there in the proposed POSCO site for the last 1 month. Essentially, last month there was an episode of violence as well when local goons had attacked protesters with bombs. And there was a lot of hue and cry after that, and more people had mobilized in the villages and kind of become they had become more vigil, and they were having a human chain outside the villages of women and children to stop the police as well as similar attacks. Now yesterday what happened is it was not yesterday actually, it was in the middle of the night of 2nd Feb when about 12 platoons of police surrounded the area, and around 3 to 4 a.m. they attacked the human chain of women and children. The women and children were mercilessly beaten up by the police, not only by the police, but sources say, people who have witnesses say that even land acquisition officers of Industrial Development Corporation of Odisha, IDCO, were also part of the lathi charge. So they were beaten up, and what the police was trying to do was to enter the village and start demolishing the betel vine plantations for land acquisition.
Surya, such incidents have happened in the past at the POSCO site as well, but what makes it different this time?
Well, so far there was the only thing, the biggest difference is that this is for the first time that the children were beaten up by the police. Until now, at least the children were not beaten up. So the children have been at the forefront of this movement. And so this is like a major, kind of a step for the police. It means that they are getting more ruthless, and they're going to be more brutal in the future. Now they don't care about children being there, which was not so in the case in the past at least.
Let's look at the legalities of the proposed POSCO plant as well, because they don't seem to have an environment clearance.
Yes.
And they, and what are the other legalities that are being violated?
They don't have an environmental clearance because the National Green Tribunal has cancelled it. That is because they had given wrong information to the Ministry of Environment and Forest. They had submitted an environmental impact assessment for a factory that would produce 4 million tons of steel per annum. But in reality, their project is for 12 million steel per annum. It's 3 times more. So when you show a smaller scale, that means your water requirements are less. Obviously, your environmental impact is going to be much lesser. So they were caught at that game, and that is why their environmental clearance was quashed. But that's not the only thing. That makes the project null and void actually. But that's not the only thing here. They don't have a legal standing memorandum of understanding with the government of Odisha as of now. In 2010, their MOU has been cancelled. It had basically, the rule is such that within 5 years of signing a MOU, if the project has not moved ahead, then you have to cancel it and start afresh. So they have no new MOU.
So essentially what you're saying that they don't have an MOU at all. So on paper that the project doesn't exist actually.
It does not exist. There is no POSCO project officially that's supposed to be happening because there is no MOU since 2010. The third thing is that one, they don't have an environmental clearance, they don't have any MOU, and the Forest Rights Act kind of enables the Gram Sabha to agree or disagree to such sort of projects. And in October, the Gram Sabha has unanimously decided to not give land to POSCO, forest land, to the project. So that's it is all illegal. There is the land acquisition process that's happening right now is just to terrorize the people, because there is no project. What project are they talking about? And they don't even have a mining lease. This is an integrated project. They're supposed to have mining lease first, but their mining lease is also kind of sub judice, because they were one of the there are a lot of applicants for that particular mining lease, which is in Khandadhar. And again, that's another environmental matter there, because Khandadhar is the source of a river, and it's Odisha's highest waterfall, and there's lush green forest out there, and again, primitive tribal group living there. So getting that mining lease is not going to be easy for them. And the matter is also in the court, because there are some 50 other applicants for the same mining lease who have applied before POSCO has.
What seems to be happening here is that, like you're saying, they don't have an environmental clearance. The Gram Sabha, which according to the Forest Rights Act, has to give a clearance for the project. So the Gram Sabha has unanimously rejected the project. There's no mining lease. And finally, there's no MOU. But in spite of that, what seems to be happening is that the state is actually playing some sort of a role of an agent over here, desperately trying to push for the project, and is actually acting on the behest of POSCO. And we've seen a similar attitude by the government of Odisha and by the Naveen Patnaik government in the past for other projects as well.
Yes,
Could you briefly talk about your experiences with?
This is like their typical strategy now. They start in the Vedanta project as well. They did the same thing without clearance and without proper necessary clearances and mining lease. They acquired land and got the factory built. And then when they were dragged to court, to the Supreme Court, they presented that this is essentially a fiat accompli and irreversible situation, and once you have the factory and once you have invested so much of money, how can you go back? So, that is the kind of compulsion that they tried to impose upon the government. And similarly, in the POSCO situation, they know that if somehow they manage to illegally, if they manage forcefully, if they manage to acquire land and get the factory running there, then there is still some chance of getting clearances if they're later on dragged to court, because the factory is there and so much of investment has already happened.
And also, in the case of Kalinganagar, what have your experiences been there?
Kalinganagar, it's been similar. In Kalinganagar, you have Tata Steel, and what we are seeing, actually, yesterday's incident is a repeat of what has happened in Kalinganagar as well. In the middle of the night, the police comes and surrounds villages, enters the villages on the pretext of demolishing homes or plantations by those people who have supposedly accepted the compensation for the project. And on that pretext, what they do is they first, it's essentially a way to get into the village and create basically terrorize the people and to make them feel helpless and that they cannot do anything about it anymore. See, even yesterday's case in the POSCO thing, they are saying this is for land acquisition, this is for only demolishing beetle vines of people who have accepted compensation. Now the question is, compensation for what? There is no POSCO project happening. So,
and that you should go at 4 a.m. to hand out checks,
yes,
and carry out the project and to destroy those fields, like you say. So clearly, what seems to be happening is that through a process of intimidation, they have been acquiring land, like you said, even at Niyamgiri or at Kalinganagar, and then once it goes to the court, you have on paper, you can show on paper that you've already acquired so much land, and then there's no going back really where the project is concerned.
And not only that, what they do is, in Niyamgiri we saw that people who had been forcefully displaced, they were kind of kept in almost like a concentration camp actually. They were kept in, in a camp which had barbed wire all around and police was guarding it. And for more than a year, nobody could go and meet those people who had been displaced. And for more than a year, they were kept captive until the resistance totally broke and they accepted the company. And then even by the time, the case went to the Supreme Court, most of these people had kind of somehow succumbed to their fate, and even in the POSCO situation, they want to do the same thing.
Surya, what's been your experience with the mainstream media on this issue? I mean, the fact that you felt the need for an alternative media, collective, Video Republic in your case, and I think that's perhaps the reason we felt the need for a Newsclick as well. So, what's been your experience with the media, mainstream media at least, vis-a-vis this issue?
See, the thing is, the mining companies are like Tata and Vedanta and Birla and all these companies. They also own a large part of the mainstream media. Either they are direct stakeholders, or they are spending a lot of money in advertising, and so they have been influencing the mainstream media in a major way in not letting real information come out of the area where they are kind of carrying out illegal activities. In 2006, 14 people were killed. Men, women and children were shot dead in Kalinganagar. And the local journalists working for the mainstream media who had shot, they had video footage of the firing incident. But that footage never came out. It never came out onto the TV. It never went viral on the net. Nothing happened. That footage was that camera person was simply paid a lot of money by the company and pressurized into keeping quiet. Even he would have lost his job essentially. That was the biggest learning experience for us, where we realized that video is going to play a major role as far as being a kind of evidence, and so the idea was to equip local people with cameras so that they can capture such things and they can document their own movements. And also, of course, on the other side, the infamous Neera Radia tapes. One of the conversations in those tapes is between Veer Sanghvi and Neera Radia. And Neera Radia is telling Sanghvi that look at Kalinganagar and how we have successfully fought with the Maoists. So you can understand from this that a person like Neera Radia talking about Kalinganagar to Veer Sanghvi and saying that these are all Maoists. And later on, we actually investigated and found out that Neera Radia has an office in Bhubaneswar that has been, lobbying with the media for quite some time, and it kind of there is no direct evidence, but what we realized was that this whole discourse of of all resistance, anti-displacement and anti-industry and anti-mining groups, resistance groups being dubbed as Maoist groups, was actually coming from people like Neera Radia. They were building up the discourse. So it was very essential to, and the video kind of allows us to capture things the way they are. It's very hard to fake a video.
So I think then what we'll do right now then, Surya, is we'll take a look at some of the videos that Video Republic has shot, and if you could just talk us through those videos. And again, like you were saying, these are videos that don't necessarily make it to the mainstream media, so that we can just take a look at what exactly has been happening in Odisha for so many years. Thank you, Surya.
Thank you, Nupur.